All right. How is everybody?
Good.
Are we ready for the holidays? Can you say break? B-R-E-A-K? All right. So I got this great email in the mail today. In fact, I will share it. All right, so I suspect all of us could use this reminder. So this is this little article I got in the mail this morning, or I read this morning. I guess it said it was posted earlier. What improv taught me about failure as a teacher and an academic. So you can substitute in there as a student as well. She says, there are no mistakes, only unexpected outcomes. I don't know if any of you have done improv. That's where she learns this. This big idea was taught to me during a free improv class, was what I needed to hear as a doctoral student about to embark on my dissertation. I was hooked and have been doing improv ever since, etc. The most unexpected outcome from learning outcome improv was how it impacted my views on failure for myself and my students. So I know you all feel at times a sense of failure. Lately, I have felt it a lot. There are numerous ways to feel like you are failing in academics. Research results that do not fit, student failing your class, harsh teaching evaluations, journal rejections, or a new thing you tried in class that didn't work. The list goes on and on. The list, in improv, the only way to fail is to overthink and not have fun, which reframed what failure was on a grand scale and made me start looking at academia through the same lens. What I learned about failure through improv comes back to those same two core concepts: have fun and stop overthinking. No one wants to feel like a failure, even though teachers know that failure is a powerful learning tool. So that's the really important thing for you as students to learn, and me as a teacher learning to teach. Although I've been teaching for over 40 years, I feel like I'm always learning it. Allowing for an endless number of perfect possibilities means letting go of what you expected to happen and accepting the last gift given. That's kind of the idea, especially from improv, that whatever the next person does, you have to pick up on. But the thing is, as a teacher or as a student, the last thing that you do, and then the last response you get from that, is the last gift given. So somebody may tell you you didn't do something right. And what it's suggesting is, see that as a gift that you can not take too seriously, which is one of her points, and not overthink too much, but just jump in and do the next thing.
Mine completed as well, but at least I put in what I had completed.
Right.
So you always started on it.
I saw that, and a lot of people did that. That's fine. That's good. And one of the things that's helpful for me is to see what people submit, because then I can figure out what it is that people need some attention to. So I wanted to talk about two things before we go into this peer review process. And the two things are how you organize it and how you use sources. Because those are, in fact, the really pretty big issues that arise when you do any kind of research. How do you go about organizing the research report, and how do you use any sources? So I'm going to change the camera around to another board that see, and this is what doesn't view. So I changed it to speaker view, and Dana is listed as the speaker, is showing as the speaker instead of me. Can you make me big?
Oh,
So Dana, you might have pinned your screen, your picture to the screen. Well, we'll just have to do it this way. All right. So if you can't really see this picture on the board, you might enlarge your screen so that you can focus on that. And possibly when you change from speaker view to gallery view to speaker view, hopefully the speaker comes up as me. See if it does this time. Nope. Well, and that, maybe that's because the board itself isn't speaking. I don't know.
on my end, I show yours the speaker.
Okay, so am I the big speaker on everybody's computer?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. So I actually sort of scratched this out a couple classes ago. And this is basically sort of the issue that everybody comes up with when trying to write a research paper. And I will tell you that this is the same issue that my master's level students come with when they're doing the review of the literature in their master's thesis. So this is a very common kind of issue that happens with when you're trying to incorporate multiple types of research. And the thing is, people's natural tendency is to tell a story, to say, this is what I did. First, I talked to Miss Smith, and she gave me all these good ideas about such and such and such and such. And then I talked to, or then I looked at a research article on EBSCO, and I found another great idea on EBSCO, and this is what I found out. And then I started looking at the professional resources for my profession. And this is what I found out there. So what I am describing is the organization that is on the right side of the screen. Hopefully it's not mirror viewed. So the paper gets organized by source, and then the next source, and the next source. And this is a very natural way to organize, and it is a good, helpful way of taking notes, certainly, and of starting. Two things about it that make it less effective for a report that's informative. One is that it's writer-based. It's focusing on what you as the writer did. Step one, step two, step three. Now, what is the purpose of this report? I'm asking this is not rhetorical. What is the purpose of this report?
To inform us or others.
Okay, and who is the audience that you're trying to inform?
Fellow students.
Fellow students. Okay, so when you do that, the focus gets de-emphasized on the information and more emphasized on the writer and what he or she did. So since the purpose is to provide some information, instead of organizing around the steps you took to get the information, if you want to help the reader, organize it around the information itself. Now, there could be a whole other paper where you talk about how the ways you can find information. You know, what are the ways you can go find out information about nursing? And that paper, you know, you might want to organize by how you went about collecting information. But this paper, the focus is on the information. And so that brings us over to the example on the left, where I have topic, and I put, you know, possible topics, but whatever topics you want or is what you want. And then underneath that is the source. So thinking about what your reader wants to know, think about a topic of information, a chunk of information, and have a section about that. Now, how did you find out this information? Well, you got it talking to a nurse. If you're doing a nurse, you got it reading an article, you got it reading the disciplinary materials, etc. One of the reasons why this is also better is that it allows you to develop a topic. So let's say you are writing about nursing, writing in the nursing profession, and you find that accuracy is a really important thing. So if you organize by your sources, you write about, and it happens to be something the nurse comes up, the interviewee comes up with, you mention it. Then you go on to other things that the nurse mentioned. Then you come to your second source. Let's say it's an article. And that article doesn't even talk about accuracy. So you start talking about other things. And then you decide to talk about another article. And that article does talk about accuracy, et cetera, et cetera. So my point being, if you have this topic of accuracy, why not bring all the times that it's talked about together in one place? And then you can actually develop sort of a deeper understanding of the need for accuracy, the reasons why it's so hard, the times when the people, you know, really found out a really negative thing that happened as a result of that, you know, whatever. It allows you to go beyond the surface on anything. When you just kind of sort of skip through the different sources, you don't get into any depth. Does that make some sense? It's harder, but it also is better both for you and the reader. It's better for you because it actually forces you to think about the relationship between what you read in one thing and what you heard in the interview and what you've already experienced in classes, et cetera. It forces you to put together like information and really think about it. Okay, so that's the first comment I have about writing about the reports. When you start looking at them and reviewing each other's, look about how you're organizing them. Um, Two. So the second thing is, how do you use information? So you all know if you quote something, you need to cite the source. And I know you've all learned that, and everybody seems to be doing a pretty good job about that. But there's also a tendency, and it's inevitable, I guess, because information's out there and you can cut and paste. There's also a tendency to basically just sort of take what you read and just almost cut and paste or almost copy it into what you're saying. And you don't want to do that. So taking a passage, making, a few editorial changes is not appropriate to do. If you see information that is really well stated in your source, then quote it. Otherwise, what you want to do is generalize about the information. Write it down in your own words. And I strongly recommend that you read material and take notes and then put the original away. And do not sit there with the original in front of you when you're writing, because then you just end up tying too closely to the text. It relates to the same point that I was making before, which is that when you organize by topic, you are forced to pull together the information on your own and make sense of it for yourself. And that's what you need to do when you're using any printed research. So the basic point is, read a source, jot down what's important. If there's something that's going to be a quote that you want, you can cut and paste that. But other than that, put the original away so that you can be working with your language. I always have a hard time saying that because, language is not your own individual. It belongs to the culture that speaks it. But you have to restate it into your own words. Okay, does that make some sense?
Yeah, it does.
And I know it's challenging because you feel like somebody else has said something better than you did. All right, so at this point, I want to move to the conferencing part. Okay. I've created some questions to use for revising and reviewing the report. And you can locate these in several places, but the most obvious place is along the navigation menu of Writing for the Workplace under this week 7 to 9 place. And so these are the questions I'm going to ask you to do in reviewing your papers and revising them. And let me talk about these questions. So first, can you see these on the screen?
Yes, is this just in Google Doc?
This is a Google Doc, but you can locate it in Blackboard, in the course site. So we're on week 9. And I added it to the end of week 9. But I've also put it on the navigation menu under week 9. Does everybody see where they're, you don't have to open them this minute because I'm just going to talk about them for a bit. Okay. So this is the procedure I was hoping to do in class. We may not actually get to it in class, but we'll start. I want you, what I've done here, these, the bold print are the outcomes for this assignment. And then I've created some questions under each outcome. And what I'm suggesting is that you talk about one outcome at a time for all the people in the group, so that you kind of focus on that one topic. And as you do that, you can add, if you're doing it as a conference, you can say it directly. You can also add comments on the Google Doc directly. And since we unfortunately don't have everybody here, and we probably won't be able to do the whole, have time to do it all, this can be continued until outside of class via Google Docs. And I guess maybe I'll move the deadline to Thursday instead of Tuesday for the revision. So the first one is writing informatively for an audience. That's, you know, the ultimate goal of this assignment is to make sure you're writing informatively and you're doing it as informatively as possible, and you're doing it in a way that the audience will get it. So these are the questions that I'm suggesting you use. What are the central topics the author is writing about, and what do they say about them? So that connects back to my whole little explanation just before. In many cases, the writer may not have central topics clearly identified. So you can help the writer figure out what the central topics are. And if the writer happened to, you know, follow a sort of a source by source kind of approach, which is fine for a rough draft, help the writer go through it and see how the different sources are, in a sense, talking about the same thing. And so you can talk about how you can group the different sources so under one single topic, and then go on. So a conference and a draft are a really great opportunity to do that. So you may see that if you did that, that was a failure. To go back to my original starting point of the class, that it was a failure that you're organizing by sources. It's not a failure. You've got the information out there. Now, how can you group it? How can you put it in things together? Secondly, is there anything that's confusing? So you all are really pretty identical with the intended audiences for these reports. So you're a good person to ask if something is confusing. Also, are there any points that you'd like to hear more about? You know, what sounded really interesting, you know, and if they can they expand on it? Sort of the flip is the third question. Are there points that don't seem relevant? And if something doesn't seem relevant, there's two things you can do with it. You can delete it, or you can figure out how to make it be relevant. Lots of times they are relevant. It's just the writer hasn't quite figured out how to make the connections.
Ms. Matson, are we gonna do this on our own paper?
Well,
Like for the people who aren't here today, or if we don't,
yeah,
this really,
you're going to do it. I'm going to divide you up, including the people who aren't here. And you're going to start, those of you who are here, and then you're going to continue onward with those who aren't here. By
so we're gonna be able to see their papers in Google Docs, is what you're saying?
yes.
Okay, okay.
Because they're going to share them with me, like you've shared them with me, and then we'll, then you'll be able to talk about them. Okay. So those first three questions all have to do with rhetorical fluency or, just the main purpose of the whole assignment. The second one has to do with document design. So I don't know if you remember, but the very first unit of this whole course was all focusing on this document design idea of trying to make things easily accessible to the reader. And that gets at issues like format and headings and, how you organize it. And so these are the questions. First, I wanted to remind you of the link about format, which is a nice generic format, which is something I've been looking for a long time out there on the web, that doesn't give descriptions of all these other kinds of categories of what you need to talk about. But basically, you want an intro, body, conclusion. And you want to get at the question of whether the information is chunked, i.e. divided into sections and paragraphs. And is there some kind of logic to the organization? And then the third thing, so that's like the deep structure design elements. And then the third item is like the surface structure of design elements. The surface structure are those things on the surface of a document that you do to help a reader see what's there. So if you've got 3 topics, do you have headings for those 3 topics? And then do you include the information underneath those things? We talked about white space a long time ago when we were looking at posters. So with a report, is there enough white space so that you can focus in on the key points that are there? Are there any lists? Should there be any lists? Might there be some places that the writer could use a list, a bullet pointed list, or a sentence level list? The third one has to do with the APA and the use of the sources. Which is what I talked about last class. And the fourth one has to do with sentence level, surface level issues. Are there any sentences that are confusing? Could you talk about how to correct them? Are there any minor mechanical errors? And notice I call these minor mechanical errors. These are not that important in the grand scheme of things. But they're kind of like, you button your shirt when you go out in public. So have you made it so that you will make the best impression? Parallelism and wordy are 2 things I've talked about very briefly along the way. And so it's something you can talk about. I was thinking that I would talk about them some more on Tuesday as we go through. So, all right, so The non-BSW nursing people that are here are Paul, Alyssa, and Dana. So I'm going to put you guys into a group. So this is where we are as of right now. I am extending the deadline until Thursday, October 20.
9th,
Which day? 29th?
the 29th.
29th. So Saturday is Halloween. How exciting. It has been pointed out that I neglected to put a page or a length limit on this, and it will be 3 to 5 pages. I will add that to the instructions. And I will actually change it to a number of words. Roughly a page is 200 to 250 words, but as you know, there can be more or less fewer words on the page depending on how you design it and the font size, et cetera. So I prefer to use word numbers. I apologize for having left that out.
So that's like 3 to 5 pages of just content of main body?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a certain amount of resources that you want us to use, like citing pages
Nope.
or anything?
Nope. I want you to use interview, at least one article, and possibly a resource and a professional resource. I discourage you from just going out and Googling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make these groups into actual Zoom groups. That is so that each of these groups is its own classroom, so to speak, that you can use whenever you want. You would have to, let each other know if you wanted to have a discussion and do it, or you can keep working on Google Docs, and I'll send out a little bit more precise instructions about how to do it on Google Docs. But basically, I want you to interact with each other on these topics, on the topics that are in the questions. And then, the bottom line is I want you to pay attention to these things for your own papers, so that they're really good along those criteria. Any questions? Sorry for being so confusing today. It's kind of a weird day for some reason, but tomorrow will be better. I'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.